This is the Life Sciences Leadership Show. I'm your host, Michael Piperno, and I'm a leadership communication coach and facilitator who specializes in the life sciences industry. On each episode of this show, I interview industry leaders from organizations of all sizes about their leadership journeys. My goal for the show is to help you gain leadership insights and knowledge that'll help you in your own life sciences leadership journey. Okay, on with the show. Welcome, everyone. I am so pleased today to have Steve Swan here. Steve is the CEO and principal of the Swan Group Executive Search, and they specialize in the pharma and biotech industry, and especially in IT and analytics and data management, all that really good stuff. And Steve and I were introduced a while back, and we've had some great conversations off the podcast about so many important aspects of leadership, from recruiting and retention, but then also the communication that needs to be happening, coaching people. Lots of topics, Steve. Oh, and culture. Last time we talked a lot about how, communication influences culture and culture fit and all of that stuff. So, Steve, I'm so glad you're here today. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome. I'm excited for this.
I am too. And thanks for having me on your podcast as well, Biotech Bites. We need to make sure we mention that so people can check that out. You can talk more about that later, of course, but let's start, Steve. How about you just tell us a little bit about your leadership journey and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So in this business, I got into this business from my mom. My mom started this company when I was a little guy. I am one of four boys, and my father was a Wall Street guy, so she needed domestic help around the house. And looked through the yellow pages, didn't find anybody that could help her with a babysitter. So she started a company with one of the other neighbors who had some sons. And I think it was maybe an effort to get out of the house. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, they started a company, grew to 6 offices in New Jersey and placed babysitters. Then state legislator and hourly wages started getting kind of crazy in the state of New Jersey. So my mom grew into placing executive assistants. And then executive assistants, the way we got into she got into technology there was back then typewriters were really the technology. So she became real adept at understanding what typewriters worked best in what situations and with whom. And then we got into punch cards, data processing, and IT, and went from there, right into biotech and pharma since we're here in New Jersey. And, it seems over the last 15 years-ish, companies have really thought about, who's going to handle data, who's going to handle analytics and those kinds of things. And naturally, they came to us. When I started this 26 years ago, it was kind of like, all things IT. Well, be careful what you wish for, right? IT and technology touches everything, and now with data and analytics, it's really all encompassing. And with biotech and pharma, in our area, we have all the big companies, but I do a lot of work in Boston and in California as well. As a matter of fact, last week I was in Boston talking to a group of about 40 CIOs, and I'll mention that a little bit more in depth later. But yeah, that's kind of my journey.
That's great. That's awesome. Hey, Steve, I knew your mom started the business way back, but I didn't know you're one of 4 boys as well. So am I. One of 4
really?
boys. Yeah, my mom actually, when we were younger, was doing word processing out of the house when typewriters were going out and the computers were coming in. We got a computer and she learned all that, and she was doing that kind of work. So that's so interesting.
That when someone had a word processor that you could print and you could do spell check, and that was huge.
I remember one time it was like it was totally huge. It like transformed, doing any kind of editing and work and all that kind of stuff. It's so funny that to see how far we've come with that kind of stuff today. We don't even think about it. We don't even think about it. So that's funny.
Now, Michael, what number are you in the lineup?
I'm number 2. You're second oldest. Yeah. How about you?
I'm 3.
You're 3.
I'm kind of buried in the lineup,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The 2 middle ones are always kind of buried in there, right? Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So, well, thanks for sharing that story about how the business evolved, because that's one of the things I love about the show and talking to people is so many people who are on their leadership journey think it's going to be linear. Like they think it's like, this is what you do to get to this level, to get to that level. And so many leaders that I talk to, when they share their story, it's like, yeah, this is where I started, had no idea where I was going to go, but then this happened, and then that happened, and that's where we ended up, which is really interesting. So how again, did you get into the pharma and biotech space? I know where we live, it's just all around us, of course, but how did that progression happen?
So really, my mom was already in it when I joined her 26 years ago, right?
Okay.
So it was just kind of like, naturally, that's where we went. I was a pre-med major in school, right? So it was it was easy to dovetail into that, and she was already in it. So I just kind of grew the reputation from there. you know?
Right.
What I did.
That's great. That's
She
great.
focused
Well,
a lot, like I said, regionally here in New Jersey. I got more into the biotech, the smaller companies,
right.
as time went by.
Good, good. Okay, great. So, hey, when it comes to leadership and retention and recruitment and all of that kind of stuff, what are you seeing these days, especially in the current environment, as far as, I guess, what are the skills that really are the skills that leaders who are looking for these positions, especially senior level positions, especially in IT and analytics and everything, like what are the skills they really need to show that they have when they're a candidate for a position?
That's a huge one, Michael, and a great one. Question. So I just mentioned a minute ago that I was in Boston this past week. It was Tuesday night. I was at the Society of Information Management. We met at a biotech. There was roughly 35, maybe 40 folks there, and the majority of them are CIOs at biotechs. And one of the trends I see in the marketplace right now is the business partner. So somebody who, reports to IT, is in IT, understands IT, but can really sit with business. So, and when I mean really sit with business, I mean you're walking and talking like business. They almost don't know the difference, right, between you and other business folks. So, and as I sat around the table and we talked, and I have a call later today with one of the gentlemen that was in that room. There's a lot of layers to it, but you got to be able to communicate and you got to be able to show your value and what you're doing. And the business partners absolutely positively need to do that. They can't come across as somebody who's just there to take orders. Okay, yes, thank you very much. I'll go take care of that. Sit at the table, help with the strategy, help build you've already built the roadmap, right, from IT, and make the strategy, the business strategy and the IT roadmap come together. But it takes a lot of communication. It takes a lot of building. I have a gentleman that I'm going to do a podcast with soon who's a CIO of a small biotech. What he wants to do, interestingly enough, Michael, is he wants to do a podcast for the new CIOs on how do they get to the point where business trusts them. Because, in IT and technology, you got to build the trust, just like anything. But the trust and the foundation is, does my IT work? Is it secure? Then you go to the next level. I'm enabling business. Then you go to the final, the most mature level, which is that business partner where you're really sitting at the table with them. But you can't just jump there. His point was, this gentleman that wanted to do this podcast, he's like, Steve, I saw your podcasts, they're awesome. But the young guy coming in doesn't get it. He or she tries to go right to business partnering. And they haven't built these lower level layers. So they haven't built the trust and they don't understand that. And I'd be willing to bet, without even asking you, I bet you run into that a lot where, you need to teach people about building that foundational layer, right? Before they go, right? Am I
right.
thinking about that wrong?
I teach that, and I also have to practice that. I mean, people that find me or people that are come into a coaching program, usually they're finding me and they've gotten to know me a little bit, and there's some level of trust and credibility and all of that kind of stuff. But sometimes I'm brought in to help a team and they don't necessarily think they need coaching. They don't know who but my experience is. And I can't just walk in as the advice monster that I can sometimes be and start giving them the advice that that's a blind spot that I still have to work on is, when to be the listener, when to be curious, and when to turn on, when they're really looking for advice and when they're ready to receive it from me.
That's big.
Because, Steve, I'll walk into a room and I'll see a bunch of leaders and I'll assess, their presentation skills, how they manage Q&A, how they're making their audience feel. I will pretty much read them right from day one. But they're not often ready for me to tell them or to help them until a while later.
Right.
And I have to wait. I have to wait until they're ready for it and they trust me and they want to hear it. But what you're saying with technical people in IT, it's just so universal and in this industry because I deal with scientists. I deal with, so many people. And I'm not just life sciences industry. I mean, but I happen to work really well with clients who are so brilliant with their knowledge, but they have to also be brilliant with how they communicate that knowledge.
Yes.
And tailor it to the audiences. And that's what I'm hearing. I think I'm hearing you say as well, is that when you can be that translator of your knowledge to someone who's not as brilliant as you in that knowledge, and you can make it matter to them and you can make it make sense to them, that's when they really start to see you as this credible resource and a leader.
Well, that's IQ versus EQ, right? I mean, you understand you're really smart, but do you have the other intangibles that, AI is never going to pick up, right? That's not an AI thing. I call that the art versus the science, right? The IQ is the science, the art's the EQ. And, we've all got a different balance of that. And I'm going to keep using the example when I went back, to go back to that round table of all those CIOs, I got to tell you, there was maybe a handful that were really, truly, the business partners, they're working on it and they all want to do it, it's just, they got to get there,
Yeah.
And on our podcast, when I did our podcast, I like stripping it all the way down, right, to basics. And I talk about kids, my kids specifically. When I used to coach teams, I mean, when I used to coach softball, right? You try and give a kid, a girl, tools so that when she's in the batter's box, right? She steps out of the batter's box before the next pitch comes. I can't get in the batter's box with her. But for the last 2 and 3 months, I've been coaching her on how to stand, what to do. She has the tools now. She's live. She's in the batter's box. She can go for it. But she's not going to use those tools or think about using those tools until she's ready, like you just said. Right?
Yep.
And usually the ones that were lower echelon on my teams, it happened every year. We'd be in a championship game, and they were my stars that day.
Yeah.
They were my stars.
I love it when it clicks like that. I love seeing that and knowing that I had a part in planting that seed that enabled them to do that.
Yeah. No, I'm talking 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. So it's not, it's impactful for them, but not what you're talking about. Different level.
Yeah, but it's coaching. And I know you do that in your work with leaders as well, and people that you recruit and help find the right place for them, because a lot of that comes with some coaching. And
sure it does.
I'm sure, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'll try. I'm sure you're a little bit like me with that, is that the coaching and advice that they get from you during that process probably serves them well afterward.
Yeah, and I do get calls and I do get emails later. I have one CIO who comes to me constantly, now at a new company about to build up their whole organization. I placed her in the past, and this will be the second organization that I'm helping her build up. She goes to her HR group and says, there is nobody like this, and you've got to use this guy. She knows how I get people ready. She knows how I communicate. She knows what I do. And she said, that's what I love about this guy. He helps them be their best. I help them look in the mirror and understand who they really are. 'Cause you're not going to, this. You're not remaking somebody, but you can get them to their A game, right? Everybody's got their own A game, whatever that is. You can't make them be your A game, but you can make them be their own A game. And first thing they need what am I trying to say? They need it. They should want to have it, right? Need it. You know? They need to know they need it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that you use that. I actually just wrote that down so I remember later to steal that from you, is that you have to get to your own A game. And I talk a lot about that in my workshops. I just did a leadership presence workshop last week for a group of really amazing, very technically minded leaders, and we were talking about all that soft skill stuff, and we were talking about empathy, and we were talking about how you show up and how you make people feel. But the main thing that we talked a lot about is that everyone in that room is going to have a different version of their best self, their best leadership presence. It doesn't have to be one way.
Right.
As a matter of fact, it shouldn't be.
Oh, and by the way, your A game, it may, in an interview, the person interviewing you in company A may not like your A game. It may not, then that's fine.
Right.
But your A game for company B or C, they love it.
Yeah. Yep.
It's just, and you don't want to be at the company that doesn't like your A game.
Exactly.
So that's, I need to help people understand that too, right? Because you don't want to treat a company like they got the bag of money that you have to get from them.
Yeah.
That's not what this is about. This is about long term, and it's about each company has their own bag of money. That's fine.
Right.
Be done with that. Get that out of your head. Find the right place that fits. My mom would always say to candidates, always, 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 and it would throw them off, where she would say, take the money out of it. Is this the role you want for the next several years? Mm-hmm. And if they hesitate, let's move on. Forget the money. And they can't, because it gets you so emotional. And you know this. Emotions make your decision-making process get all twisted up.
Sure.
We're humans, for the last 10,000, fight or flight, right? We talked about that too, I think, last time,
Right.
And that's what we have in our heads. And when you buy a house, buy a stock, change jobs, it's, we're not meant to make those rational, void of emotion kind of decisions. But we need to do it sometimes.
We need to. And that's one of the things that I talk with leaders about all the time, especially when they're more advanced in their journey and they have a lot of experiences and they've had their failures and they've made the mistakes. There's a gut instinct that they don't always listen to that actually is pretty informative to them. And that's why I love where you said about take the money out. What's your gut? You didn't use those words, but in my brain, I was like, yeah, that's a gut check. That's like what's your gut telling you. And so often that's going to be right.
Always.
Yeah.
Go with it. Go with
Yep.
it, you know?
Yep.
My mom always said that to me. She would, because we worked together for, well, I started 26 years ago. She only retired 6 years ago. So we worked about 20 years together. And she would always call me, like if she was running, she still follows sometimes some of my placements. She wants to hear about them, you know?
Cool.
And,
That's fun.
she'll ask me all the time, your gut's always right. What's your gut telling you right now? You know?
Right.
Because I listen to Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, right? And I've even seen them a bunch of times, but they talk a lot about that, the emotion, and trying to pull that out of your decision-making process. And like you said, if you pull that out, it's a gut check. It's a gut check. And that's great. Candidates should be doing that more often. And leaders too, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's a lot of experience in your instinct.
There's a ton.
Especially when have a lot of lived experience in a certain industry or in a certain role. And even with me, Steve, like I kick myself when I don't listen to when something doesn't feel right.
Agreed.
You know, whether it's someone who wants me to customize something for them that I know it's not what they need, they're trying to Band-Aid. Or they're coming and they say, I really want you to come on site and do this team building event. And as I'm hearing more, I really hear it's a problem with one or two people that need coaching, not a team building event that you want to put everybody through to try to improve culture.
Correct.
You know, and I'm at the point in my career and in this company where I'll say, and I've always been very honest, but where I'll say very honestly, listen, I don't think this is going to work. Here's what I think you need. Can we talk about that?
Yeah. Now, you know, as you're talking, I'm thinking about the beginning of my process with each candidate, right? It's got to be real similar to what Michael does when he walks into a situation. Because what I do is I assess, right?
Yeah.
I have to assess. And I don't let the candidate know the company, the position, anything. I want to hear the unfiltered, who are you?
Yeah.
What do you want? And I always ask that. What do you want? What are you looking for? And I get all that data. And I listen between the lines as to what they're saying. And then I'll know, because I've already spoken to the hiring manager, what they're looking for, what's the candidate looking for. And boom, and everybody tells me that I make great matches. Well, that's why, because, you know, and I do believe, and I've said this to companies a million times, and they don't believe me, I think they're at a disadvantage. Because when they post a job, I'm a candidate. I already know the company. I know what you're looking for. I know what I got to say to try and get your job. Now with AI, it's even getting worse.
Yeah.
When I talk to them, they haven't seen anything. They don't know what I'm working on. And I really understand, I would call it drivers. I understand their drivers and I understand the hiring manager's drivers. And then what I got to do is go through the whole process with them again, void of emotion. And then once we get near the end, maybe once or twice a year, I do the same sort of thing that you just talked about, is I'll say to them, I don't do this much, but I know you're making the wrong call, either to go to a role or to not go to a role. You know, sometimes they back out and they say, you know, hey, that's not right for me. What did I miss? What you know, I've been doing this a long time. What did I miss? Because I disagree. You know, and I always say, at the risk of sounding like a used car salesman, because we're so far down the process here that I think this is the right role. But a lot of times when someone says they're not in, I'm like, you're right. That's not going to work for you. You know, that's not right. So anyway.
How do you, I mean, because I know that matchmaker that you are known as someone who's very good at getting the right match. And, you know, there's so many things there. There's right fit for the role, there's right person for the role. But a lot of what I talk with folks about, especially when I do team building work and internal communication work, is culture and culture fit and all of that. And I know there's no formula or anything like that. But are there ways that you help people find out if they're the right culture fit for these placements as part of the process?
Well, a lot of it comes in that pre-work that I just told you about. I'll give you an example. I placed somebody at a $4 billion company about 2 years ago. And the role before I got it was open for 16 months.
Okay.
And I didn't know that. I filled it in 3. And the hiring manager told me, he looked at me on Zoom like this. He's like, I've been waiting 19 months to hear a yes. I'm like, whoa, I didn't know that. Yeah. Anyway, so they were having trouble getting people to say, first of all, to find the right skills. But second of all, to find somebody to say yes, to like the culture. This particular company, it's a big company. $4 billion is a decent size, but it operates like a small company. It gives folks a lot of autonomy, and it lets them make their own decisions, a lot of latitude. Okay. This woman, was at a very, very large company, a J&J, an Allergan, a Merck, something like that, where you don't get a lot of autonomy. The strategy sent to you from up above, and she was at the cusp of going from an associate director to a director. She was an associate director now. Director was the new company. So when I spoke to her on the phone, you know, tell me about yourself, you know, yada, yada, yada. I really want to go up a level. I also want a lot of autonomy. I feel suffocated here. Right then, when I heard that, I'm like, this is the right company and the right culture for this person. So I made a big push for her, you know, and I made sure, and they interviewed her, and they were like, this is awesome. This is
Yeah.
perfect. And she loves it because she is getting to, stretch out a little bit. She's got some elbow room as opposed to the last place where it's like, you do this and that's it. And it was a high level analytics role, data and analytics role. For a commercial team. So I have to understand my companies, I have to understand my managers, and I have to understand what their limitations are as far as what they can do for the people underneath them, right?
Yeah.
And then what this person needs to get to that next level. So it's just a lot of, and maybe some of it's inferred, and I just understand it because I've been doing this so long, right?
Right.
But a lot of it is really in the questioning. I mean,
Yeah.
because what people overestimate that Steve Swan does is that he finds candidates. We got access to most of the same people, 90% of the same people. I mean, maybe I got 10% on the margin who I can get to respond to me because I've known them for 20 years.
Right.
In essence, we see the same people, but now it's what's my process? How do I do it? How do I handle it? And from what I'm told, I handle it differently, meaning I pick up the phone and I call people back, that's revolutionary, apparently.
Isn't that crazy? But it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear that from folks in your industry and candidates. I don't even get a call back from a recruiter after I've gone on this, and after then I get ghosted and all that kind of stuff.
That?
I mean, I happen to be younger in my career. Like 3 interviews later, and they're telling me I'm a rock star, and then they're not returning my calls.
Yeah, I don't get that.
It was hard. Yeah, I don't get that either.
That's a kindergarten lesson.
I know. Yeah, right. But yeah, I think, Steve, you and I are very similar in that assessment and that curiosity, because what I'm hearing from you when you told that story is not only were you focused on the role and everything, but you wanted to make sure that person could thrive in that environment.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, yeah. It's funny.
The company's going to love it, and they're going to love it, so, and then I'm like, cool. I did a good thing.
And how better to set each other up for success by making that right match. And that's same in my work. Like, I want to make sure I'm the right coach or facilitator to do what you need to do. And very often people find me and they don't know exactly what they need. But if they're willing to talk to me, I'll figure it out. I'll help them figure it out. I'm very confident in that. It's funny. I had a lead come in through my website, and I always say, let's get on a quick call and let's talk, because I need to hear. Like, you think I need to hear what the issues are. I need to ask questions. I need you to get to know me. And as soon as they come back to me and say, well, send me pricing first before you'll get on a call with me to learn me. I mean, and I don't mind if you're price conscious, that's okay. But if you're not even willing to have a quick conversation with me before you want a proposal from me, I can already tell that that's not going to be a great relationship.
No, because, and I get the same thing, right? When let's say I'm talking to you about a position, and you send me Mary Smith, right? Mary just emails me, hey, Michael tells me you're working on a role. What's it paying? Whoa.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. First of all, like you said, if you're asking the price first, what's the car look like? What color's the car? What kind of option does it have? You don't walk into a showroom and ask the price before you've driven it, before you know what the options are, all that stuff, right? And so that's kind of, doesn't work for me either, because it's kind of like, if you're price focused now with this, that means later you're going to be, from where I sit, you're going to be price focused later, meaning you're going to jump from that company when somebody has a better price, if that's all you're worried about. So I'm not getting in that game either. Right.
Yeah. And I'll work with, listen, I can customize things to fit almost any budget, but I want to know, I want you to care about the relationship at the beginning like I do.
Right. Well,
do you know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. So let me translate that into my world. I want to make sure that you have the skill set. So I'll make it up. They're paying $200 to $250 on this. Well, you have 8 or 10 years of experience, you're going to be at the lower end of that. You got 20 years of experience, you could be at the upper end of that. But what are some of the things that would get you that spread? If I come right back and say 250, and then you call me, and then you're not even close to the 250 mark, I just wasted everybody's time.
Yep.
So, anyway.
Yeah. So listen, in your world, and in the work that you do, and the success you've had at doing it, what advice would you give either someone who's looking for that right candidate or someone who's looking for that right fit, as far based on things, maybe based on mistakes you see people make, like
just the one that comes to mind is the one that I was just responding to on LinkedIn just now. I posted a post. It might have been yesterday. I can't remember. It had to do with companies that leave their role up forever and just keep interviewing people and so on and so forth. So my advice to companies would be, don't do that. It doesn't look good. It makes you look like you can't fill the role. Now maybe there's a big justified reason internally why the HR group needs to leave it up there or something. But when it's up there super long, the candidates are saying to themselves, and lots of folks don't want to apply online, right? Because how special am I if I'm applying online? And, that kind of thing. How serious are they about it if they have this senior level role posted online? But what a lot of folks will see, and they'll see that, and they'll say, what's wrong? Why can't they fill this? Do they really want to fill this? Or it's either a tough manager, a tough company, the money's too low, the location stinks, or they want me in the office more than I want to be. There's something wrong with it. And lots of times that's not the case, but that's the impression. That's the impression.
Perception. You're talking about my world and what I help people with often. It's like, no, that's not your intent, but hey, that is the perception, and you have to accept that.
Understand how it looks. You can't control that,
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, all I can control is me, right? I can't control them, right? So
that's right.
That's the big one. Right now, that's just front and center for me, because I just saw that, and I'm responding to those emails that people whatever, commented back on my my post. It's crazy.
No, that's good advice. Absolutely. The perception really does matter.
Yeah.
Question for you that I often ask my guests here is that what's the best leadership advice you ever got, or that you would give someone? Yeah,
so I think it's the same, really. Ask great questions, be a great listener. Because you're going to get to the bottom of it for yourself as to, does this make sense for me? And will this work for me? And is this what I want? Because at the end of the day, you got to take care of you. You can't take care of anybody else. And because if you can't take care of you, then nobody else can. And if you're taking care of yourself, then everybody around you will thrive, right? You'll be able to show them the true you. You'll be able to work in that team or in that environment. In a way like nobody else could. So I think being a great listener, understanding what's going on around you, and being able to take that to heart and utilize that information to, perform at your best. I think it has to do really about listening, quite frankly.
I think listening is one of the seriously underutilized leadership superpowers out there, especially in our current day where things are moving fast. We're in the age of massive distraction. And when you listen and be curious and really, number one, be present for another human being and truly be present, be there, but then also listen and help them tell you more, by reflecting back or by being curious and asking questions. I mean, it's such a gift these days because it's almost rare.
It's really rare. And you know what it is, Michael, is that when you listen, you need to be able to, and people can't do this. You're good at it. I can already tell. I know you're good at it. You got to be able to filter out the static, the noise. What's real? When someone's saying something, or when because we're taking in so much data, so much information, I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks. I've had more meaningful conversations about people doing hiring in the biotech industry since October 1st of this year than I have in the last year and a half. And part of the reason that I'm assigning that to is people got tired of listening to what I believe is static coming out of politics right now, because they haven't been, the companies, and I get this, right? You can't make a financial plan, you can't make a strategic plan if the foundation's moving, if it's truly moving. But it hasn't moved. It's been talked about getting moved, and the companies have been sitting around for a year and a half saying, okay, listen, we haven't made any moves. We have money, we have the ability and the need to do these things. Let's just move forward. If something material really changes, then we can replan. But for now, let's treat this as noise, as static. We have to. We have a business. We have a P&L, So it's the same thing when your emotions come into play. That's static, right? It's the same thing when the stock market's trading sideways. That's static. You're still focused on your job or leadership skills or whatever that is. What really matters. And to your point, being present, that's number one. If you're in that meeting for 40 minutes, stay in that meeting.
Be in the meeting.
You don't want to be at your kid's soccer game mentally. You don't want to be at at the local restaurant mentally. Stay there and make sure you're there and be present and understand why you're there and how you're there and contribute, do your thing, so.
And we're all human. Distractions get in the way.
Places at once, right?
Yeah. Things are on your mind and everything, but it takes intention, to turn off the noise and to be where your feet are. Yes. Or, where you need to be. And what motivates me to do that is it's not just about me. I want to make sure I show up for them. Sure. I want them to know that I am 100% here. Right. Because that makes people feel valued and that they matter.
It does, yeah.
So
I started, I don't remember if I mentioned it to you. I think I did. I started using the Calm app in 2016.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Yeah. 10 minutes a day. And I'll be honest with you, probably haven't used it in the last 4 or 5 days, but if you put pressure on yourself to use it, that's kind of counterproductive, right? Yeah. But I'll meditate 10 minutes a day. And the reason why I started using it was exactly that. To focus on being present, and if you practice it,
Yeah.
it helped you a lot. And
Yep.
I got one of my daughters into it. She was an athlete and she was a pitcher, so she's on the mound all day long.
Right.
And, if something goes wrong behind her or she throws a bad pitch, nobody's coming out to her to rub her shoulders and say, okay, champ, you got this.
Right.
She's got to do it herself right there on the mound. Got her meditating starting in 10th grade, and she's running marathons now and stuff. So, yeah.
So you like the Calm app. I used several years ago the Waking Up app. This
Okay.
Sam Harris has this way. Same thing, meditations and everything. I found so much value in it. And,
Right?
After practicing it for a while, it's something that comes a little bit more naturally. But
It is.
yeah, being mindful and checking
think
in
it's
with
great.
yourself. Well, you mentioned earlier taking care of yourself. I mean, that's something that this is my second time around as a business owner, and I have to admit, the first time around, I didn't do a very good job taking care of me.
Yeah,
I took care of everybody else, and I've definitely learned, especially this time around, that the more I take care of me, the better I am for the people who need me.
Exactly. It's same
so
around home,
simple.
Every relationship, right?
Yeah.
If you're not you and you can't take care of you, how can you expect, that two-way? You can't.
Right? You can't. No, you
It's
can't.
impossible.
Yeah.
You're a moving target, and
Right,
you don't want to be a
exactly.
moving target,
Exactly.
So anyway, but
Well,
yeah.
Steve, man, and boy, that I always love talking to you because it goes so quick. We always have time.
we covered some ground, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
We
We
always
did. I'm
do.
so thankful to you for coming on and sharing,
thing.
your insights and thoughts with our listeners here. So, hey, listen, tell folks about how they can learn about you and how they can get in touch with you and anything else you want to share before we wrap up.
Sure. Yeah, I think the best way for folks to find me, I think the easiest way for folks to find me is on LinkedIn, right? Everybody's on there. So Steve Swan, the Swan Group, they can do that, or they can shoot me an email, steve@swangroup.net. And don't forget to check out my podcast. Michael's on my podcast. Thank you very much.
You got it.
Biotech Bites, BYTES. It's been fun. I've been doing it for, I'd say about 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. Anyway, it's been great. And it was born out of the thought of doing what I'm doing with you. I've had all these conversations with these leaders for so many years, and every time I hung up, they were gone. So I decided, why not record them and let people listen to them? And I'll tell you, when I walked into that boardroom up in Massachusetts, I got so many people coming up to me and said, I listened to your latest podcast. That was awesome.
Good. Oh,
Really?
that's great.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice when you get that? Same with me. It's like, oh, I listened to your show and I really like that. I'm like, oh, thanks. Glad to hear it's, people are actually listening to it.
Yeah, I'm just bantering back and forth ideas and having these conversations. And it's just what I've always done. I get people talking, right? That's part of my business. And they talk and say stuff, and, I disarm them. I make them know that it's nothing to be nervous about, and we just go, and people really enjoy listening to these folks. It's a real collaborative environment, the IT environment. So they want to help others, and so they want to listen to what others have to say. It's weird, though, to me, Michael, and this is just sort of a sidebar, that they don't use it as a platform to say, hey, Michael, I saw you on Swan's Biotech Bites. I'd love to connect with you. I don't think you'd be opposed to that. I don't think anybody would be opposed to that.
No, of course not.
Any CIO who reaches out to another CIO, they were like, can you make the introduction to me? I'm like, well, just send him an email on LinkedIn and say you saw him on Biotech Bites,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
No,
Maybe we're
absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of noise on LinkedIn with people who try to connect with me, but if I could see they actually listened to something or they actually liked a piece of my content and why it mattered to them, then let's connect for sure.
Yeah, hey,
So-
Michael, you and Swan were talking about meditation. That really resonates with me. Love to catch up with you sometime. You know,
Right.
whatever.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
making that up. But if
Exactly.
someone did that with one of my IT leaders, hey, you and Steve were talking about data and how it works and what you got to do with it as it goes into AI or whatever. Love to get your thoughts on this. And I'm talking about using this vendor. So can we talk for 10 minutes on next week or whatever?
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Anyway.
absolutely. Yep. You're right. You're right. Well, listen, this has been fun. Thank you so much for coming on. I'll make sure I put link to your website and to your podcast in the show notes for folks so they can click on that and hop over to there to learn more about Steve. And Steve, I look forward to our next conversation.
Yes, me as well. Thank you, Michael.
You got it.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the show today. If you enjoyed it, please rate it on your favorite podcast platform and tell one colleague or friend about it. Thanks. We'll see you next time. The Life Sciences Leadership Show is brought to you by the Comvia Group, experts in leadership communication coaching and training for life sciences leaders. Learn more at www.wearecomvia.com. That's WEARARE, Comvia, COMVIA.com.